Hello, everyone. Greetings and welcome to this virtual event, an evening of Klezmer. I'm Michael Stern. I'm music director of the Stamford Symphony, and I'm joined by my good friend Carl Rosen as we spend some time tonight hearing different perspectives of Klezmer music from around the world.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you to the musicians of the Stamford Symphony for opening our program tonight. We'd also like to thank the following partners, without whom this event would not be possible: the United Jewish Federation of Stamford, New Canaan, and Darien, the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County, and UJA-JCC Greenwich. So Michael, tell me, what does doing an event like this mean for you and the Stamford Symphony?
Here at the Stamford Symphony, we're all about making music matter for the entire community and bringing not only performances on stage, but engagement off the stage to as many people as we can. Secondly, I don't believe in boundaries, and I don't think we should categorize music. Here we are doing a deep dive into Klezmer music, which is, of course, a traditional and very old form of Jewish music. But whether it's indigenous music, spirituals from the 18th and 19th centuries, whether it's New Orleans jazz, any kind of music at all can be universally understood and shared. And by having this opportunity to talk a little bit, listen a little bit, and consider the experience of what Klezmer music is, it really can bring us together. After all, as you yourself know, Klezmer is a whole celebration of life. In our tradition, Klezmer was music of celebration, it was music of entertainment, it was music of mourning. It was a reflection of our experience. Of course, that experience was Jewish, but it was really a common humanity that we can share, and you hear that in this joyous music, and that's why I love it so much.
But also learn about the culture that brought this music to life, l'chaim, and where you can experience it today. To me, Klezmer is a full-body experience. Just like jazz, you don't just listen to it, you experience it. And it's not just your ears, but your mind, your heart, your soul that it touches. When I hear a minuet, it brings me back to a different time and place. When I hear Klezmer, it transforms me back to what you'd call the old country. It's great to be part of an event that exposes this type of music to a new audience and bring it to people who are already familiar with it. But more importantly, I'm just really excited that we are all able to come together and really enjoy this fantastic music.
I couldn't agree more, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of this concert. But before we get back to the music, our friends at the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County wanted to share a little more about the history of Klezmer music.
Thanks, Michael and Carl. My name is Dr. Jeff Bendramer, and I sit on the board of the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County, and I'm a Klezmer musician. I really love Klezmer music, especially because Klezmer comes in so many styles, each evoking an emotion: excitement, joy, sadness, and spiritual reverence. The word Klezmer originally referred to the musical instruments employed by Jewish folk musicians playing at weddings and other social gatherings. It is a combination of the Hebrew word clay or tools and zemer or melody or music. Much of the Klezmer music inspired by old traditions feature instruments such as clarinets, violins, basses, and cymbalums or hammer dulcimers. Traditionally, melodies were usually assigned to the lead violin, while other instruments such as a second violin or viola, provided harmony, rhythm, and some counterpoint. Later, the clarinet became more popular to carry the melody, and brass instruments took over the counterpoint. You saw Pavel Vinitsky and Louise Owen perform some of these instruments earlier today. Eventually, the term Klezmer began to be applied to the musical genre in Yiddish, Central and Eastern Europe, as well as to the folk musicians themselves. By the early 20th century, Klezmer music appeared in the United States and started to infuse elements of American big band, Dixieland, jazz, and swing music. David Terrace and Neftali Brandwein were among the European-born musicians who popularized klezmer music in the United States in the 1910s and 1920s. American-born musicians, such as Max Epstein or Sid Beckerman and Ray Musiker, soon followed. In recent years, klezmer music has experienced a number of revivals, which has resulted in the popularization of the folk tradition, as well as adaptations for the orchestra. Today, many popular and modern klezmer bands include bands like Brave Old World, Hot Pastrami, and the Klezmatics. It has been my pleasure sharing my love and knowledge of klezmer music with everyone. Now I'm pleased to welcome the globally renowned, Grammy Award-winning superstars, the Klezmatics. The Klezmatics have performed in over 20 countries, released 11 albums, and with a career spanning more than 30 years, they have shown how Yiddish and klezmer music are a vital presence in the modern world. Their commitment to community is as strong as their commitment to music, which is why we are so excited to have them here with us today. Please enjoy this performance by the Klezmatics.
Mein Teilreisel, schöne, kleine, süße, feine Reisel, mein, die zelf in weite Länder meistens viel mit Pracht. Der zähl mein Teilreisel, schöne, kleine, süße, feine Reisel, mein, der zelf in Land wie jeder eine singt und lacht. Wie listige Apikos und tanzen in Aro, listige Apikos und trachten nicht für Gott, listige Apikos und nehmen sich Harim. Singen mit Abrim, mischt sich, kischt sich in die Meiler, in die Backen, dreht sich, und ein das Glück. Liebt sich, spielt sich, in die Häuser, in die Gassen, klärt sich, flecht sich, redet sich wie ein Smick. Listige Apikosen sorgen nicht für den Struf, listige Apikosen haben nicht kein Ruf, listige Apikosen schweigen nicht kein Gal. Listige Apikosen seinen sich nicht mal. Die Kind sind mir mein Teierjengel, Kerzen, Schöpfen, Fegel, Ferdel, Turm mit echt. Zusammen wollen wir weg in Land von Glied. Genießen wollen wir für neue, freie Wäule, frische Tage und Nacht. Im Kicken wollen wir schon keinmal nicht zurück. Listige Apikosen tanzen in Aro, listige Apikosen trachten nicht für Gott, listige Apikosen nehmen sich Harim, listige Apikosen singen mit Abrim. Hort nicht Meure, schwätze gar nicht, Fahren, Starren, Reichet, Eichel, Zeug, dem besten Wein. Yiddish, das ist a Chor. Im Narisch, Judisch, kindisch, tragisch in im Sitz. Als nicht gewähnt, nicht du in Kemo, wird nicht sein. Du, wenn ich reise, meiner schöne, kleine, süße, feine, ständig bist. Wir wollen Kirchen sich und weiter trinken Wein. Listige Apikus und tanzen in Arul. Listige Apikus und rachen, ich bin Gott. Listige Apikus und nehmen sich Garin. Listige Apikus und singen mit Sabrim. Als ihr erst schön, als ihr erst das Stickel Chaser so leicht rienen, als wie per der Bur. Zwangan Eden ist der Tampf in Eulen Haser Liebe, ist der listigste Akkord. Schickere Apikus und tanzen in Arod. Freiliche Apikus und leben nicht in Gott. Nackte Apikus und nehmen sich Garin. Glückliche Apikus und seine Nimet im
Hi, this is Frank London of the Klezmatics. Greetings to all of you. It's a pleasure to share this great music with you at home and the Stamford Symphony. We fully support and applaud the Stamford Symphony for being part of the ever-growing world of Yiddish music and culture. We hope you enjoyed our performance. For more information about the Klezmatics' upcoming performances, go to www.klezmatics.com. Thanks.
Many years ago, when Zalman Mlotek was a Tanglewood conducting fellow working with Leonard Bernstein, the maestro told him that he had great talent and was sure that he could have a promising career as a conductor. He then told him that it was his knowledge of Yiddish and the music of Eastern European Jewry that would set him apart from other musicians. The rest is history. Zalman embarked on a musical career that included a commitment and dedication to Klezmer and to Yiddish. Zalman's talent as an artist, a visionary, and an intellectual has earned him global accolades and admiration. It is with great honor and pleasure that I now introduce you to my nephew, Zalman Mlotek.
Thanks, Mimi. My name is Zalman Mlotek. I'm the artistic director of the National Yiddish Theater Folksbiene, which is the world's longest-running continuous Yiddish theater in the world. And I was the musical director for the acclaimed production of Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish. The idea of presenting Fiddler in Yiddish with the original Shalom Aleichem came to me many years ago when I first heard a recording of the Israeli production that was done in the 60s. I had always wanted to present it, but we presented in New York after many Broadway revivals and after the movie. It had to be presented in Yiddish on the same artistic level that any language performance would be. And I went to Joel Gray and asked him. He wrote me right back saying I'd be very interested in directing. When we first announced that Joel Gray would be directing our production of Fiddler, we got over 2,500 inquiries from actors who wanted to participate. We eventually saw 700 people, and we cast to 26. When auditioning, we had to find the quadruple threat of the actors. They could sing, they could act, they could dance, and they could repeat the Yiddish in a believable, plausible way. In fact, we have a brief promo of excerpts of our production of Fiddler on the Roof to give you a sense of what it was.
A fiddler Affendach. Meshuggah, nein? Aber bei uns in Anatevke ist jeder einer ein Fiddler Affendach.
Tradition, 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 tradition. Masse, sie san Masel jeden, was wir sennen da. Es hat der Poli, was der Mechatolim, durch ein Michelina, Masel die Geschah. Mit Masel und mit Broche und ewig gesund soll wir sein. Und der Masel ist nicht bei uns, nach was ist bei uns, alle drei. So sei!
The National Yiddish Theater is dedicated to illuminate the Jewish experience through theater and music, presenting works that are primarily in Yiddish, but not necessarily. Case in point, this season, we're going to be presenting the world premiere of a new opera based on the book and the movie The Garden of the Finzi Continis. Later in 22, we'll also be presenting Harmony, which is a new musical written by Bruce Sussman and Barry Manilow. Throughout the year, we'll also be doing Yiddish performances online and also in person. Please visit us at nytf.org, National Yiddish Theater Folksbiene.org, nytf.org, for more information about our upcoming and future productions. Now I'm happy to introduce Pavel and Anna Vinitsky, who will be performing an arrangement of Klezmer dances. Much like our production, you can expect to hear the wailing sounds of the clarinet that elicit both sadness and joy in the unique fashion that is Eastern European Jewish music.
It has been such a pleasure to play this great music for all of you tonight. It's even more special to be doing it with my friends at Stamford Symphony. This piece you are about to hear was specially composed for this concert by Anna Vinitsky, a wonderful pianist and composer. It is an arrangement of some of the most delightful traditional klezmer tunes for clarinet and piano. This combination of instruments may not be the most common in the klezmer tradition. However, Anna's arrangement gives these old tunes new sonority while preserving the most important feature of klezmer music, the ability to express an extreme spectrum of human emotions through singing, dance, and humor. Filled with immeasurable joy, we hope this piece will inspire and uplift your spirits for the holiday season. Here is Anna Vinitsky's Klezmer Dances. Enjoy.
I'm so happy that my great friend Branford Marsalis could join us tonight and add his unique perspective to this celebration of klezmer music. What I admire most about Branford, aside from his brilliance as a musician, is his realization that music really has no boundaries. I suppose there's good music and bad music, but good music should be for everybody, and it comes from everywhere, and Branford is pretty fluent in all of it. And his great experience in classical, in jazz, in every kind of music that you can think of, makes him a perfect foil for this conversation tonight. Please help me welcome Branford Marsalis. I'm so delighted to be talking to you, Branford. Great friend, great musician, and I think with all of your incredibly fluent and varied experience and knowledge and virtuosity in so many different kinds of music, the idea of discussing klezmer music and, generally speaking, world music in the context of how we have over time evolved to use music in our lives is a really interesting one. One would think on the surface that klezmer music from Eastern European sources, mostly Jewish, Hungarian, Russian sources, and let's say the Black experience coming to this country, there are a lot of similarities, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. There's certain cultures where music represents everyday life. There are literally songs for life, songs for birth, songs for death. Klezmer music has the same relationship. They're wedding songs, they're funereal songs, they're songs of joy and happiness and all these other things. And it was one of the great, I think about how different my life would have been growing up pre-internet had I not moved to New York and had a chance to experience music from other cultures on a first-hand experience, not rather through rumor or discussion or the occasional recording. It's been a blessing.
You bring everything to the table when you play, right? So, you know, from Dixieland jazz, the way you were brought up by your dad and in your family, to, you know, really out there improvisations, to, we've done the Iber concerto, right? Classical music and everything in between, which is one of the reasons I admire you so much. How did that get processed for you? Because that's part of the story of how klezmer music or jazz or spirituals or anything else gets integrated into the larger culture.
That constant conversation with that word that regular humans like to use, genre. Say, well, man, you play in so many different genres. I say, well, it's easy. There's no such thing as genres. Right. That's a word that people who listen to one particular style of music kind of invent to justify the fact that they're only interested in listening to one kind of music. Music has these sonic rules. Where to place a note, when to play that note, when to bend. You don't bend whenever you feel like it. And these are rules. They're not rules that you find in a book. They are sort of natural rules that have developed over the hundreds of years of people playing this music.
You talked about rules, right? You weren't going to be told what rules are, right? Klezmer, like the music that came in, especially, you know, at the very early stages when the slave population, so beaten down, found ways to bring community together, just like oppressed people in Eastern Europe. They were largely untrained musicians, right? They didn't go to conservatory, right. And yet they developed techniques, but then those techniques and those ideas, those musical ideas, start to infiltrate into larger consciousness, and you have appropriation. How do you explain that evolution, or what was your experience figuring that out?
I didn't hear about the rules or the strictures or codes about what one could or could not do until I moved to New York, until I moved to the promised land. And then it was like, oh, no, you can't do that. You're a jazz guy. And I'd never heard, it was really funny because I grew up playing R&B. So to hear myself called a jazz guy was really ironic and on one hand, but I was like, wow, okay, I'll just ignore that. I always thought about music as being a negotiation in sound. And if it's a negotiation in sound, then what it sounds like is what it is.
Right.
And then when I went to school, they were saying, well, jazz does this. Jazz is essentially this. Classical music does this. And I'd listen to the music and I'd say, I don't hear any of these rules when I'm listening to this music, so I will, again, ignore you. I think that we spend so much time focused on the physical notes because that's the great thing about classical music. Buddy Bolden is supposed to have been one of the greatest jazz trumpet players ever, and it's rumor. It wasn't written down. We have no way of tracing it. You just have to take the word of Jelly Roll Morton and Louis Armstrong and record in interviews saying, you never heard a sound like that. We'll never know what that sounds like. We'll never know what an orchestra sounded like in the 18th century.
Right.
But we have these notes. And if you're following the natural laws of music, there's a way that you have to hold the bow to get these notes to sound in a manner that we assume is similar to what that music would have sounded like at the time. There's certain things in like listening to klezmer music. I learned a lot. I actually wrote some tunes based on some klezmer music for a cartoon, Rabbit Ears Productions, kids shows, and I did one on David and Goliath. And I did all of this research, and I wrote this song and named it L'chaim.
Well, not that I needed a reason to prove that I loved you before, but if you're writing a song like L'chaim and you're like a fellow traveler there, I mean, I'm all in.
One of the things that I want to say, because it popped into my head, if you ever really want to hear klezmer music in classical music, just listen to Mahler, please.
Right.
Gustav Mahler, the opening of Symphony 5, parts of Symphony 1 in the second movement. This pianist, Uri Kane, did this record called The Mahler Project, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically took all of these Mahler melodies and had a klezmer band play them. And my jaw dropped to my stomach when I realized how Mahler was able to take these melodies that he grew up listening to as a child and incorporate them in his music in a way that is so classical. Instead of trying to use some sort of mathematical calculation to use these musics, just listen to them and listen to them and listen to them until they just become a part of your sound palette. And at that point, it's not even klezmer music anymore. It's just sound.
It's just music, yeah.
Just sound. And then you go out there and you write and you play and you have a good time and you just listen to music and you allow it to enter you and you live with the consequences of that. You keep trying to control the environment. And that's the greatest limitation in music because it cannot be controlled.
You hit it on the head because it's just about the music of our lives. I mean, klezmer music served a function, but then it was just them expressing themselves. And when you hear, you mentioned Aretha, you hear her going deep, she's singing for her life. She's not singing a blues tradition. She's not singing jazz. She's just singing for her life. And there is something so elemental and so communal in that, and so human in that, and that's really what brings all this music together. It brings us together, and I just love the idea that, I mean, I could talk about music with you all day. You're talking about Prokofiev, Mahler, Aretha, and jazz, and it's just one continuum, right? It's just
a lot of good music is good. Great music is universal.
All right, Branford, I love you. It was
amazing
to have this conversation with you. I want to hear your klezmer music. I want to keep making music with you, and stay well.
You as well.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Daniel Prager. I am the musical director of Lamroth Hakol, a Jewish community in Buenos Aires, Argentina. First of all, I want to tell you that it is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you sharing this klezmer night and this wonderful concert. I want to especially thank the organizers and hosts for the invitation. And very, very special thanks to Tommy Handler, who we feel is part of Lamroth. Also, I want to thank Marcelo Tausig, President of the Lamroth Advisory Board, who worked to make this happen. We have been linked to klezmer music since we were born, or rather, before we were born. We have listened and played klezmer for as long as we can even remember. It is part of our identity, of who we are. At Lamroth Hakol, we have the opportunity to play every Friday, as well as for the Jewish holidays. It is always a pleasure to play these melodies that we feel absolutely our own. Today, we will share with you something of what we do, hoping that you enjoy it as much as we do. Thanks for being here, thanks for listening, and again, thanks for the invitation. From Buenos Aires, Argentina, greetings to all of you, and let the Klezmer continue and grow.
I just loved that terrific presentation on the breadth and impact of klezmer music. I mean, I can't think of a better way to remind ourselves how grateful we should be, not only to have this music, but to be able to share it together. It just reminds us of why we are alive. So I'd like to thank our Stamford Symphony musicians, Pavel and Anna Vinitsky, Louise Owen, Robert Zubricki, Lois Martin, and Peter Sanders for all of the performances tonight. And I'd also like to thank my great friend, Branford Marsalis, Zalman Mlotek, the National Yiddish Theater Folksbiene, and the Jewish Historical Society for all of their contributions to this program. And finally, a big shout out and thank you to our partners and producers of tonight's event, without whom none of this would have been possible. So thank you to the United Jewish Federation of Stamford, New Canaan, and Darien, UJA-JCC of Greenwich, and the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County. And again, my friend Carl Rosen, to Tommy Hendler, and to the great Nick Gonzalez, who is our symphony's community engagement and education manager. And now we have one final piece for you, Prokofiev's Overture on Hebrew Themes. Enjoy, and thank you for joining us.